He dumped his wife because she was fat, but months later, when she walked into the room, he didn't even recognize her. She got fit, got powerful, and made him regret everything. This isn't just a story about losing weight. It's about reclaiming power, finding self-worth, and delivering the kind of revenge that doesn't need a single word. Watch till the end, because karma doesn't miss. And tell us in comments where you're watching from. Monica had always been the kind of woman who believed in standing by her man. When she married Calvin, she knew life wouldn't be easy. He was a dreamer, ambitious, relentless, but not yet successful. She didn't care. She believed in him. She supported him when his business failed, cooked his meals, covered bills when he couldn't. And all the while, she never complained. Monica was heavier than most women, and she knew Calvin noticed. He never said it outright, but the way he looked at her had changed over the years. Still, she held on. Love, she believed, was more than appearances. Then one day, everything seemed to shift. Calvin came home with exciting news. A prestigious business summit had invited him to present. Investors would be there. Deals could be made. It was the moment he had waited for, and Monica celebrated like it was her own victory. She pressed a kiss to his cheek the morning he left. "Go get what's yours," she whispered. She never imagined those would be the last kind words they'd share. Hours turned into days. Calvin didn't call, didn't text. At first, Monica brushed it off. Maybe he was networking. Maybe he was just busy. But deep inside, something didn't feel right. Then a message came from a friend. "Monica, I just saw Calvin. He's at the Crown Regency Hotel." But he wasn't alone. Her hands trembled. Her mind refused to believe it. No, Calvin wouldn't do that. Not after everything they'd been through. She grabbed her coat and keys, her body moving before her mind could catch up. She had to see it for herself. The Crown Regency was dazzling. Polished marble floors, gold trim, and chandeliers that caught the sunlight just right. But none of that mattered to Monica. Her eyes scanned the lobby frantically, her heart in her throat. And then she saw him, Calvin. He stood near the lounge entrance, casually sipping a drink. But it wasn't just his presence that stunned her. It was everything about him. The slick suit, the gold watch, the smug posture of a man who had finally made it. And then there was her. A young woman, model thin, dressed like she belonged in a magazine, leaning into him, laughing. Monica's feet felt glued to the floor, but her heart pushed her forward. She called his name. "Calvin?" He turned, casually, as if he barely recognized the voice. His eyes flicked over her. No emotion, no guilt. Monica. Just her name. No warmth, no explanation. "You didn't come home," she said softly. "You stopped answering. I was worried." The young woman turned then, smirking as she looked Monica up and down with razor-sharp judgment. "Oh," she said, her voice oozing with mockery. "Is this her?" Calvin didn't answer. "I'm Sierra," the woman continued. "Calvin's wife now. He doesn't have time for a fat pig like you." The words echoed louder than the hotel lobby itself. Monica's eyes widened, her lips parted. She looked to Calvin, certain he'd say something, anything to shut it down. But he didn't. He took another sip of his drink. "You'll get the divorce papers soon," he said flatly. No remorse, no hesitation. Just like that, he turned away, allowing Sierra to loop her arm around his as they walked toward the elevators. Like Monica had never existed. Monica stood frozen, the insult echoing louder than the lobby noise. Her heart felt like it had cracked in half. Her breathing grew shallow. She tried to hold back the tears, but one escaped, trailing down her cheek. A voice called from behind her. "Monica." She turned around slowly. Her eyes locked onto a familiar face, one she hadn't seen in years. "Derek?" she whispered, barely recognizing the quiet boy she used to walk to school with. Only now, he wasn't a boy anymore. He was dressed in a tailored suit, calm and composed, but his eyes burned with disbelief at what he had just witnessed. He had seen everything. "That was Calvin?" he asked. Monica nodded, her throat tight. "That was my husband," she managed to say. Or, "He used to be." The pain in her voice said more than words ever could. Derek glanced in the direction Calvin had gone, his jaw tense. Then he turned back to Monica, his voice gentler. "Come with me. You don't need to be here." She hesitated, her body still in shock, her dignity clinging to the last shred of strength. But something in Derek's expression made her feel seen, even in her most broken moment. "Okay," she said quietly, and with that, she walked out, one trembling step at a time, leaving behind not just the hotel, but the life that had betrayed her. Derek didn't say much as they walked out of the hotel, and Monica was grateful for that. Her body moved, but her mind was frozen, playing the moment back on loop. Sierra's voice. Calvin's silence. The look in his eyes as if she were nothing. She barely remembered the ride across town. Derek drove a sleek black SUV, the city passing by in a blur. At one point, she whispered, "I don't know where to go." Derek glanced at her, eyes soft but serious. "Then come to my place," he said. "At least for tonight." She hesitated. This wasn't a man she had spoken to in years, but something in his voice felt safe, and Monica, who had been thrown away like yesterday's news, just needed somewhere to breathe. She nodded. When they arrived, Monica was stunned. Derek's home sat behind iron gates, nestled in a quiet, wealthy neighborhood. The kind of place Calvin used to talk about when he was still dreaming. But unlike Calvin, Derek hadn't just talked. He had built it. As they walked in, she paused in the grand foyer. Polished floors, warm lighting, art on the walls, but none of it felt cold or boastful. It felt calm. "You can stay as long as you need," Derek said, setting down her bag. "I don't want to be a burden," Monica replied, her voice barely above a whisper. He smiled gently. "You're not." That night, Monica sat alone in the guest room, staring at her reflection. Her eyes were red, her shoulders slumped. She had never felt so rejected, so discarded. And yet, beneath the wreckage of her emotions, something stirred. Not anger, not revenge, but the faintest flicker of, "I can't stay like this." She didn't know what healing looked like yet. She didn't know who she would become. But something had shifted. And the first spark had come not from Calvin's cruelty, but from Derek's kindness. Monica woke up to unfamiliar silence. No bills on the table, no cold shoulder across the bed. Just quiet. She stepped into the hallway, her bare feet brushing against the polished hardwood floors of Derek's house. A house far too nice for someone like her, she thought, but she was too drained to argue with kindness. Derek was already in the kitchen, dressed casually this time, pouring coffee like it was just another morning. When he saw her, he offered a soft smile. "Morning. You sleep okay?" She nodded. "Yeah, thank you, for everything." He slid a mug toward her and leaned against the counter. "You don't owe me anything, Monica. What happened yesterday, that wasn't just wrong, it was cruel." Monica looked down, embarrassed. The words still echoed in her head. "Fat pig." Before she could respond, something behind him caught her eye. A worn, slim book tucked between two elegant cookbooks. She reached for it instinctively. The title read, "Ancient Herbal Remedies and Weight Wellness." She opened it gently. Inside were pages filled with handwritten notes, tea recipes, natural meal plans, and a calm, thoughtful guide to transforming the body and the spirit. Derek noticed and stepped closer. "That belonged to my mom," he said. "She was overweight for most of her life. People mocked her, looked past her, until she changed everything using that book. Not for them, for herself." Monica flipped through the pages, seeing the care in the annotations, the underlined affirmations. "It's different," she murmured. "It doesn't feel like some fad." "Because it's not," Derek replied. "It's about treating yourself better, changing how you live, not just how you look." She hesitated, then asked quietly, "Can I borrow it?" "You don't have to borrow it," Derek said. "It's yours." She held the book for a moment, feeling the weight of something she didn't quite have a name for yet. But as she turned to head back upstairs, Derek's voice stopped her. "There's something else I need to tell you." She turned back. "That contract Calvin got, the one that changed everything for him, that came from me." Monica stared at him. "You gave him the deal." "I did. My company approved it. I didn't know what kind of man he'd turn into once he had money, but now I know." She looked away, her mind spinning. The same man who lifted Calvin up was now the one offering her a hand. "Don't worry," Derek said. "I'll deal with him. You don't have to carry that." That night, Monica sat in the guest room with the book on her lap. Her fingers ran over the pages. She didn't fully know what her next step would be. But for the first time since her world fell apart, she wasn't thinking about Calvin. She was thinking about herself. The book sat open on the table, its pages filled with gentle but firm instructions, simple herbal teas, balanced meals, and short breathing exercises. Nothing harsh, nothing impossible, just a roadmap back to self-worth. Monica flipped to a page titled, "Honor Your Body to Heal Your Heart." She read it 3 times. That morning, she made her first cup of tea. It was bitter, strong, earthy. She grimaced at the taste but drank every drop. Derek passed through the kitchen, raising an eyebrow. "Trying it already?" She nodded. "One sip at a time." He smiled, but didn't press her. Over the next few days, Monica kept her distance from the world. She didn't post updates. She didn't share before and after pictures. This journey wasn't for the world to see. It was for her. She followed the book like a sacred guide, waking up early to stretch, preparing meals with care, and sipping bitter herbal teas that began to grow on her. Each recipe was a small act of rebellion against the voice that once called her a fat pig. She still remembered the words, but now they didn't echo as loudly. They didn't sting the way they used to. Derek checked in from time to time, but never invaded her space. Instead, he made small gestures, a new yoga mat left at her door, fresh herbs stocked in the kitchen, a quiet playlist humming in the background while she cooked. He never said, "I'm proud of you." He didn't need to. One afternoon, Monica was folding laundry when she noticed something odd. Her favorite cardigan, the one she used to wear to hide her arms, was loose. The sleeve sagged. The fabric hung differently. She blinked, unsure. Later that evening, she stepped on the scale. She had dropped weight. Not a dramatic amount, but enough to notice, enough to feel. Her breath caught in her chest, not from the number, but from what it meant. It was working. Her body was changing. But more than that, she was changing. She was no longer just surviving what Calvin had done. She was rising from it. By the second month, Monica had fallen into rhythm. She cooked, trained lightly, and followed the herbal routine with discipline. But more importantly, she started to smile again, sometimes just to herself, for no reason at all. One evening, Derek appeared at the kitchen doorway while she was plating dinner. "You're glowing," he said casually, leaning against the frame. Monica gave a small laugh. "Probably just sweat from chopping onions." "No," he said with a grin. "It's something else." She paused, lowering the knife. "What?" "Confidence," he replied. She looked away, caught off guard. Compliments still felt foreign. Derek stepped closer, clearing his throat. "There's a business gala next weekend, high profile. A lot of people will be there, including investors who know Calvin." Monica tensed at the sound of that name. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'd like you to come," Derek said. "As my guest." She blinked. "Me? I haven't been to anything formal in years." "You don't need to worry about that," he said. "You've worked harder on yourself than most people ever do. You belong in any room you choose to walk into." She looked down at her hands. Stronger now, steadier. "Are you sure?" "Completely," Derek said. "Let them see what real transformation looks like." Monica didn't answer right away, but something in his voice made her say yes before her fear could talk her out of it. She didn't know how she would feel seeing Calvin again. But this time, she wouldn't be walking in as his discarded past. She'd be walking in as something and someone entirely new. The night of the gala came quickly. Derek had it all arranged. Monica didn't have to lift a finger. A tailored gown in a deep, rich tone. Matching heels. A quiet stylist who didn't ask questions, just transformed her with soft curls and simple elegance. When she stepped out of the guest room, the entire house fell quiet. Derek stood in the foyer, frozen. "Wow," he murmured. "You look breathtaking." Monica gave a shy smile. "It still doesn't feel like me." "That's because it's not the old you," he replied. "This is who you really are, finally seen." The car ride to the gala was calm but charged. Monica stared out the window, not speaking much. Her nerves buzzed beneath the surface. Inside the grand venue, chandeliers sparkled overhead, and music drifted through the air. The crowd was a sea of power, CEOs, investors, industry elites. But when Monica entered beside Derek, heads turned. She didn't walk in like someone trying to prove herself. She walked in like she belonged. Guests whispered, "Who is she?" "That's Derek Lawson's date. Fiancé, maybe." Monica didn't react. She didn't need to. Then across the room, she saw him. Calvin, He stood near the bar, holding a glass, dressed in a navy tux. Sierra was beside him, talking to someone Monica didn't recognize. But Calvin. He looked different now. The confidence he once wore so easily had dulled. There was something tense in his shoulders, something forced in his smile. He turned lazily to scan the room, and his gaze fell on Monica. At first, nothing, a passing glance. Then a pause. He blinked, looked again, his brow creased. He leaned towards Sierra and whispered something, never taking his eyes off Monica. She looks familiar. Sierra glanced over and shrugged. No clue who that is, but she's stunning. Calvin kept staring, his lips parting slightly, and then recognition hit. His entire body stiffened. His mouth dropped open just enough to betray the shock. It was her. It was Monica. But not the woman he had humiliated in that hotel lobby. This Monica was transformed. Graceful, glowing, stronger than ever, and she was standing beside Derek Lawson, the very man who had given Calvin the contract that changed his life. Calvin took one shaky step forward, almost in a daze. But before he could move closer, Derek stepped beside Monica, placing a hand gently on her back. He turned to a small group of high-profile guests nearby and said with quiet authority, "Everyone, meet my fiancée, Monica." Monica didn't speak. She didn't look at Calvin. She didn't need to. Her presence said everything. And Calvin? He just stood there, silent, stunned, and suddenly very, very small. Calvin barely made it through the rest of the gala. He tried to keep his composure, smiling at people who greeted him, sipping his drink, pretending not to glance at Monica every few minutes. But the damage was done. She hadn't even looked at him. And yet somehow, that was worse than if she had screamed. Sierra noticed his silence and leaned in. "What's going on with you? You've been weird ever since that woman walked in." "That woman," Calvin muttered, "is my ex-wife." Sierra's face froze. "Wait, that was Monica?" He nodded slowly, still staring at the place where Monica and Derek had just finished a round of polite handshakes. She doesn't even look like the same person." "Clearly," Sierra said coldly. "Maybe you should have appreciated her when she was yours." She turned and walked away. Calvin stood there, alone, unraveling. The next morning, things got worse. A formal letter arrived at his office, signed by Derek's legal team. Monica's presence at the gala hadn't just been symbolic. It had been strategic. The company was initiating a performance audit on Calvin's contract. Project delays, unaccounted expenses, financial gaps. He skimmed the pages, his hands beginning to shake. Then came the line that hit like a hammer. Failure to meet the contract terms within 30 days will result in a full refund of the dispersed funds and possible legal action. He slammed the folder shut. The money was gone. Spent on luxury clothes, rented penthouses, designer bags for Sierra, and high-end vacations. The project had barely moved forward. And now, Derek's company, the one that had lifted him up, was coming for accountability. He tried calling the project manager. No answer. He texted the finance guy. Nothing. Desperate, he picked up his phone and dialed Derek directly. It went straight to voicemail. And that's when the panic truly set in. The woman he had abandoned had risen higher than he ever imagined, now standing beside the very man who held his future in his hands. And Calvin could do nothing but watch it all fall apart. Calvin tried to hold it together. He pushed his team harder, called in favors, tried to fake progress on the project. But the numbers didn't lie, and neither did the timeline. Derek's legal team followed up exactly 1 week later. The tone was colder. If the work wasn't completed within the remaining 3 weeks, they would initiate legal recovery. That meant frozen accounts, seized assets, and permanent blacklisting in the business world. He stared at the letter, bile rising in his throat. Just a month ago, he was untouchable. Now, he was cornered. At home, things weren't any better. Sierra had grown restless. The glamour of his wealth had started to fade, and so had her patience. "You've been stressed for weeks," she snapped one morning. "Whatever's going on, fix it." "I'm trying," Calvin said, gripping his temples. "But if I don't come up with the money to finish this project, I could lose everything." Sierra paused. "Everything?" "Everything." Her silence was brief, but cold. That night, she packed her things. No long goodbye. No tears. Just a note on the kitchen counter and her engagement ring beside it. "I followed the money. Now that it's gone, so am I. I thought you were a winner, Calvin. I was wrong. Calvin read the note 3 times, but the meaning never changed. She was gone, just like he had once walked away from Monica. And now, karma had made its way back around. 2 weeks later, Calvin received the final notice. The project hadn't advanced. The financial discrepancies had worsened, and now the company was done waiting. He was being sued for breach of contract. All remaining funds would need to be refunded. His accounts would be frozen. His personal assets, including the condo, the car, and what was left in his investment portfolio, would be seized. And the worst part? The notice was signed by Monica Harper, Derek's newly appointed head of compliance. Calvin stared at the signature, his stomach twisting. It was official. The woman he discarded had risen from ashes he helped create, and now she held the pen that finalized his downfall. Desperate, Calvin stormed into the company's headquarters, demanding to speak with someone, anyone. Security buzzed him in, only to escort him to a small waiting area. Moments later, the door opened, and in walked Monica, poised, professional, unbothered. "Calvin," she said coolly, "you have 5 minutes." He stood there, speechless. He hadn't seen her this close since the hotel. She looked like a completely different person, no longer the woman who once cried at his silence. "Monica, please, I messed up. I was stupid. I lost everything." She nodded once. "I know. Can't you just give me more time?" "You had time," she replied. "You wasted it." He reached for her hand. She didn't move. "You're really not going to help me?" "I did," she said, stepping back. "Years ago, when you had nothing, and you repaid me with betrayal." Her voice remained steady. No anger, no venom, just truth. "This isn't revenge, Calvin," she added. "This is accountability." With that, she turned and walked away. And Calvin? He slumped into the chair, defeated, alone, and finally forced to face everything he had become. Months later, Monica stood beneath a white canopy, sunlight dancing on her skin, as Derek slipped a ring onto her finger. Cheers erupted around them. She had once been left for being too fat. Now she was loved, fully, deeply, and for exactly who she was. Monica's story wasn't about revenge. It was about rising, quietly, steadily, and on her own terms. She didn't need to scream or settle scores. She let her growth speak louder than her pain. You are not defined by who left. You are defined by how you rise after they do. Have you ever been underestimated, only to come back stronger than anyone imagined? Share your story in the comments. Maybe someone out there needs to hear it today. If Monica's journey touched you, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that inspire, empower, and heal. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.